Hey guys, it's Matt. Let's do something completely different in this video and try to use the comment section for those that care to participate. Use the comment section to cast a vote. And essentially the vote will be about this question, or the question at hand is, do you believe this world, this earth, whatever's out your window, do you believe it's more like the Truman Show, or do you believe it's more like the Matrix? Okay, is it Truman Show or is it Matrix? And using the vote, voting in a certain way, you'll be able to give your weight as to what you favor. It's not going to be one or the other. I think most of us here would see elements of both. So before you vote, if you just give me a few minutes to talk about how to cast the vote, and then if you'll just give me a few minutes on the back end to do a mini presentation on each side before you vote, I'd appreciate it. Now, I'll be very brief with this. Because I know people will vote right away. But then on the back end, I'm going to explore my personal beliefs, all the evidence that lines up, that I believe lines up on both sides, and even bring in other possibilities like Dark City. So just for now, if you believe the world is more like the Truman Show, that means you essentially believe things are more real than many of us in this community. That, of course, what Wikipedia says about almost everything is not the way things actually work. The entire reality is full of lies, but generally real people or a dark element are behind the lies. Like in the Truman Show, actors, people constantly making presentations to Truman. It wasn't like holograms or things morphing in front of him like the Matrix. It was real in the Truman Show. It was all a lie, but it was an orchestrated lie using means and mechanisms like we understand. So if you're a Truman Show person, you'd vote like Truman Show 8, and then you would assign a 2 to the Matrix. You're giving a weight of 8 to the Truman Show and a 2 weight to the Matrix to equal 10. Now, if you're more, let's just go all the way to the other end of the spectrum. Many of the highly Mandela-affected people, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're going to favor the Matrix. I mean, highly Mandela-affected people have seen reality shift in front of their eyes, okay? When this happens, I don't think you can be a Truman Show person very much anymore. You're more of a Matrix person. So a highly Mandela-affected person might say, I'm going to give a Matrix the weight of 7 and the Truman Show the weight of 3 because, hey, there are real groups here, and there are dark societies, and there is something, Matt, called DARPA, and there is people running around that might not be the same incarnation as you and me, but there's real people around called Melvin P. doing things, and that's more when they're doing things and making their event 201 presentations. That's the Truman Show. So it's absolutely, I think I think it's completely wrong personally to pick one or the other. It's a hybrid of both. This reality system is a hybrid of both, or an amalgamation of both, in my opinion. And it's just about, in the comments, what weight do you give it? So couple quick more things, guys, before you vote. And I hope you put the voting off as long as possible. But I know I'll load the video and like people will be voting right away. So I've got to do this quickly in the beginning and get to the details on the back end. Number one, if there's people screaming, crying out from the bed, rising up out of their bathtubs. The robes are already on. I can hear you. Matt, did you ever think, Matt, there's more than 2 options? I hear you. So we're going to talk about how Dark City is kind of a missing link almost between the Truman Show and the Matrix. This is going to take a while to play out, guys. This, the old guard, or the super old guard, the ancient guard knows exactly what I'm talking about, but anybody who's only been here a few years is going to struggle a little bit with this. So the details will come on the back end. If you have another option, you might say Truman Show, 2, Matrix 2, plus, use a plus in your voting in the comments. Plus, here's another explanation, or, again, it's easiest to use a movie as to explain reality. That, if we've seen the movie, we know what you mean, but you could say plus if you might say, Matt, it's not that simple. How I define reality is not going to be a weight between the Matrix and the Truman Show. There are other factors. So try to assign the weight that you believe, and then use a plus if we're missing something, if that makes sense. So I guess the best place to start now is to just tell you where I'm coming from. Let me just do my vote now, because that's the only, I might be losing people already. I have to go back and listen to this to see if that explanation on how to vote was clear. But I'll vote right now. Let's just say when I started doing this, or started investigating or walking the path of truth, the old Texas Shrugged book channel back in, I was like 2010 or something. I don't know. But it was a long time ago. And I think where I started is where most people start. And I think most of us, at least here at this channel, we follow this sort of path. We assign more weight to the Truman Show at first, as I did. But over time, as you observe and as you look into things and everything starts to break down, and how could it keep pulling this off, and how could all these conspiracies keep getting pulled off, and then potentially you're Mandela affected, your sliding scale over time starts to give more weight to the matrix. That's what I believe many of us have gone through here. So personally, if this was 2010, I would say Truman Show 8, or even 9, and Matrix 1, believing it's all coordinated by real people, it's all coordinated by deep, secret societies. The Vatican Library has all the ancient knowledge, and that's how they're able to pull all this stuff off and even build some of the architecture, and it's all real and everything can be explained. Like when you drop a brick on your foot, it hurts. And there's, I'm not giving a lot of stock to fluid reality and reality shifts and things like that. That's where I started. But even if I was not Mandela affected, which I am to a big time degree, and I'll read all your comments. I know about that's just a psyop I've fallen for. I'll read all your comments about that. I still will have shifted as the years gone by to more of a Matrix person. So where I am now, especially considering I'm Mandela affected, I would say Truman Show 2 or 3, Matrix 8, or 7, much more towards the Matrix side. For example, when you look into the amount of research I've done into the Lincoln to Kennedy synchronicities, the chances, the probabilities, if you factor out the probabilities of one chance of a probability, then you times it by the next, then you times it by the next, it gets into like 1 in 500 billion or something ridiculous that all these Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities exist. And for anybody crying out, I can hear you saying, well, Matt, you're doing research saying that the security detail for Lincoln, the guy was named Kennedy. How do you even know that? And I agree. If it's all planted as fake information to create Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities where they didn't exactly exist, then that takes the chances way down. But it's still almost impossible to pull off in a, quote, real world. In other words, you could go to an old library in Duluth, or an old library in Bakersfield, or an old library outside of Atlanta. You're going to find, if you dig into the rare books room and the research and the old books, that, it's showing here that the security detail for Lincoln, as he was approaching the Gettysburg Address or whatever, or Gettysburg, whatever, to read the address or whatever it was, his name was John Kennedy. I mean, this is one of 50 synchronicities. I'm not going to go into the synchronicities. We've done that before. But so it's not like if the web just made it all up now, well, Matt, don't you know with the web, they can just put in anything. I hear you. But most of this stuff, you would be able to go back and confirm in like a rare books room or of an old library, things like that. So the powers that be here, if you're more of a Truman Show person, they just went and they just planted. There was no man named John Kennedy on the Lincoln security detail. So, but we're just going to plant it in all these books, knowing that 100 years later there'd be a president named John Kennedy, and we're going to artificially create these Lincoln to Kennedy synchronicities. See how impossible it gets, even looking at it that way? See, it's, to me, but if you want to back up from there, I mean, the eclipse by itself is impossible if those things are what they say. I don't buy 1 in a trillion coincidences. I think the eclipse was put here, and I'm straying a bit, I'll get back on point in a moment. I think the eclipse was put here by whoever designed this reality construct, or God, maybe a part of you, your part of your spiritual self was involved, and then you agreed to come in here for whatever reason. The eclipse is, to me, is a gigantic neon sign that says, here comes the solar eclipse, and I've done this before to somebody plowing the fields in 1850. The eclipse says, look at me. Hey, asshole. This is a sign and symbol that the world you live in down there, it ain't very real, And even the people that are plowing the fields that observed the total solar eclipse in the 1800s, they attribute it to a sign from their God, of course. But how many said, wait a second, what I don't even know in the 1800s if they would even attribute it to the moon blocking the sun. I don't know when they came up with that. I don't buy any of it, because what they tell me the moon is, I don't buy. What they tell me the sun is, I don't buy. If they're coming together exactly on top of each other, a 100% match, like as I've said many times, 2 quarters milled back to back on the same machine. If things are just flying around in planetary bodies, that's like a 1 in a trillion. Once something gets to a 1 in a trillion, then it simply says that what they're saying is happening isn't happening. It's a total sign and symbol that says, asshole, the world, this is a reminder, the world you live in is not very real or not real at all. That the eclipse by itself does that for me. I think it should do it for anybody, but by itself, let alone all the other stuff the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities and all the stuff we've looked at. Reality, it just breaks down as you look into the details. It's no different as we look into the very small, breaks down. Like, there's no way this could have been pulled off. There's no way this could be related to this. Then you get into 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion. It's no different than how reality itself operates, even the way science says. As you look at the atom, or as you look at a molecule, that's made up of atoms, Matt. You jerk. And then, what's an atom? Oh, that's made up of protons, electrons, and neutrons. What that's made up of? I don't know, quarks and strings and what? But you can't keep going smaller and smaller and smaller into the Russian nesting dolls. It's not something can't be made up of itself. You can't keep going smaller and smaller back to infinity. So all of reality breaks down very much, in my opinion, in the same way that when we look at the closest details on any of these conspiracies, especially something as big or as major as what's going on now, the coordination of it, the 7-Eleven job application, you get into it and you just say, it takes you away, in my opinion, from a Truman Show presentation. Like 7-Eleven by itself for me. It says, no secret groups could pull all this off with everything connected to everything. No way. So if you've heard me talk about, the creeps, the creeps are here, and whatever is in the avatar of Melvin P. could walk by you on the street, and that's Matt, that points more to Truman Show, because Melvin P. he's behind a lot of this and those creeps, and that's more of a Truman Show thing, a fake presentation, getting us ready for this with the Event 201 and all that stuff. Okay. I hear you, but if you think these creeps have access to a magic, or what I've said, reality buttons and levers, or they know something about how the underlying nature of reality works, then that would lead you more to assign more credibility to the Matrix here. Every time now, I don't mean to ruin anybody's Matrix experience, but every time I see Morpheus, I think of that horrible overacting that I'm not even going to try to imitate. At least Keanu Reeves was just playing himself, and Carrie Ann Moss was pretty good. But Morpheus, if it wasn't such a legendary character, I can watch The Matrix and really enjoy it and look right by that ridiculous presentation that Morpheus, anyway, sorry, Lawrence Fishburne bothers me in a lot of respects, but I like a lot of the movies he's in, like Event Horizon. Sorry. Now, there are more than 2 options, but for the purpose of keeping the vote simple, we have to weight the Truman Show, weight the Matrix, and then, or you could say plus. So let me just, in terms of plus, by the way, guys, before I go to Dark City, let me just show you, just doing a little bit of Dark City research, this came up for me. Why would this come right up for me? Does it know I've been, quote, interested in this topic? I mean, why would this come right up for me researching the doctor character from Dark City, and I'm only going to show this for a second because I don't know what's going to cause a problem here. He's Kiefer. Kiefer is coming out on Letterman. Yep, there it is. If you're just driving, Kiefer is coming out on Letterman, and Letterman's like, "Why are you dressed like that?" And he's like, "Well, I lost a bet, and I have to wear this dress. See, I lost a bet." "Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. You lost a bet, so you have to wear a dress on Letterman." And the audience just lapped it up and believed it. And yeah, what we said a few videos back, that's just stuff for crazy conspiracy people. I mean, it just boom, it just was right there. I'm like, so now like reality is just showing me, even when I'm not asking for it, actors and people in a dress. And I can hear somebody screaming at me now, Matt, you're kind of getting into a high level reality conversation as to how fluid the world is and the reality construct. And now don't stray into actors having to wear a dress. I hear you, and it's not appropriate. But I have come up with even some things for not directly for Denzel, but some things that could be interpreted for Denzel. We'll talk about that some other time. Denzel seemed to be clean, the only one that's clean regarding these humiliation rituals, but I don't think anybody's clean. Anyway, sorry. So, Dark City. People are much less familiar with Dark City than they are the other movies, so I'll just do a minute and a half on what's going on here. Very, very interesting from a reality junkie perspective if you haven't seen Dark City. You have, I kind of originally said it was a blend of the Truman Show and the Matrix, much more like the Matrix, but you have these they're presented as alien, okay, but they're as old as time, whatever that means, called the Strangers. And the Strangers created a reality construct where, this is hard to catch unless you've seen the movie a few times, but they came to what we call Earth, and they stole a bunch of people. They hijacked a bunch of people. The reality they created in this, cube or whatever, the Dark City, is not the Earth. They say they went to the Earth, and they kind of stole people away. Now, inside this reality system, of course, the people that live inside the reality system, like Jennifer Connelly here, and Kiefer Sutherland knows what's going on because he works for the Strangers. It's this dark world, and the premise of it is on a Monday they could be a janitor, at a high school, and these strangers, these aliens that have a collective conscious, they reset reality. It seems to be daily. So the buildings change, the highways change, what train routes, everything changes. Buildings pop up, buildings go down. But people wake up on a Tuesday, and the guy that was the janitor at the high school is now a senior partner at a law firm. And all his memories and experience, he's always been that. And that's the world that's always been for him. And of course, he's an expert in the law. And so just everything is completely fluid. These strangers do it. It's called tuning to study the human being, to study the human soul, because one can only assume they lack something as special as the human soul or the human connection to real spirit. They present it in the movie as study the human soul. Now, when you see this, or any of the old guard here, the first thing you just immediately pops into your head that these are the creeps here. Right, in ours, this is Melvin P. and these creeps and people like me that have the belief that they're in the avatar, but they're not the same as you and me. Now, maybe they're not as dark as these strangers. They're probably darker. The Bezos of the world and the George Soros's, little George Soros getting out of the mailroom. But you just say these are the creeps here. They're not the same as us. Whatever you believe your soul and spirit is, I think most people here would probably think that I don't want to say his name, Melvin P. does not have that same spark. Who knows what they are. But you see this movie, it's like the strangers, oh, that's the creeps here. And you think, well, the first grade truther would say they're just running around planting all the fake events, and everything is arranged by secret societies and men and women making phone calls, and it's all arranged, which is, when you study the conspiracy and you've been on this side, quote, this side of YouTube long enough, no group of people could pull all this off. I don't know why I keep being the only one saying this over and over again. I mean, it's such a simple revelation. It is a revelation because we do think for years that just people pulling it all off. It's impossible. It's impossible. You know, they say 3 people can't even keep a secret, or it's just impossible. So, you know, you have in Dark City, you have an element that does relate in a way to the creeps here, but they do literally in the movie have their hands on reality buttons and levers. They create new lives for people overnight. You know, this is the environment of Dark City is the Mandela effect on steroids times a million, where it's not movie lines you wake up to that have changed. Your whole life is different, and then you believe that's what your life has been. But the whole point is they study the soul, which means they don't have it, which tells me the creeps don't have something that we have. I want to point out something I don't think most people in, quote, our community seem to get. And some will even mock me for bringing it up in, quote, this way. But to me, it's very simple. If you voted, look, most people listening to the words that are coming out of my mouth, most people here would believe it is some sort of a hybrid between, you know, the Truman Show and the Matrix. They're not going across the board here. The people listening to this sort of presentation are going to assign some sort of weight to the Matrix. Maybe not as much as I would, but the point is, if you assign any weight to the Matrix, saying, well, Matt, look, it is more, you know, dark societies running around coordinate everything than what you say, but I'll assign a 3 to the Matrix. I'll give the Matrix that weight. I'm giving the Truman Show a 7. See, even if you assign a 3 to the Matrix, because maybe you've had one thing that you think is a Mandela effect, but you don't like to put yourself in the Mandela effect community. If you assign any weight to the Matrix at all, then anything is on the table here. And I mean anything, if you believe the Matrix side has any weight, because then it potentially, when the fluid comes in, the reality construct comes in, and anything is on the table. So I'll potentially say, you know, we end up spending all this time trying to figure out how stuff like this, I'm showing the Great Pyramid for anybody driving, I'm showing the Great Pyramid, you know, how we try to figure out how this stuff was built. Then I'll come along and say, well, I don't know, and I'm not pushing all my roulette chips here, but I'll keep on the table that this is just simply a part of the reality construct. It's part of the Sims game that we participate in. It's designed as part of the Monopoly board. Somebody's like, what? You're like that guy you present from Lethal Weapon. Yeah, Joshua. Yeah. Talk to Mr. Joshua. Yeah, you guys are out. You guys are gone, man. Matt, that's quantum of conscious. You're gone, man, like Pluto. That's what the guy says when Joshua puts the lighter to his arm. But, you know, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What Gus is saying is, why do I have to believe anybody built it? Why? Why do I have to believe anybody built it? So I study reality over here, and it's okay for me over here, even though people are triggered by Mandela effect. Like I said, the Kit Kat Dash came and went and all this little trivial stuff, but of course Australia's shifted and all that. Okay, for even outside the Mandela effect, when you study everything over here, then it's okay for Matt to start saying, well, these Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities are impossible. And if you look into all the stuff they pulled off over how many of our entire lives, it's unnatural how they could have pulled it off time after time. And we see right through it, but everybody around us can't see it. And it's the same script over and over again. That once Matt's talking about kind of reality breakdowns happening over here. But when he says potentially nobody built the pyramid, that's just crazy. It's no different. Why is one any different than the other? There's no, to me, a potentially nobody built the damn Great Pyramid is no different than if you're Kit Kat Dash Mandela affected. No different at all. Inside of a Sims game, is somebody inside the Sims game, if they realize they're inside a Sims game, to be like, well, there's no way you can lift that boulder. It's a Sims game. There's no way. There's no limitations here. Okay, just to stop and reiterate what I'm saying here, this is very important. If you, in the truth community, you study different facets of reality. We call ourselves reality junkies. Many of us that have been doing this a long time, we've stumbled upon many things. We might disagree, but personally, we've all stumbled upon many things that we call reality breakdowns. Beyond the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities, like the weird stuff that happens over and over and over again, like the Archduke Ferdinand's license plate on the day of the two asses in a nation just happens to code the exact armistice date of the Treaty of Versailles and the Hall of Mirrors and all the connections. It just goes on and on and on and on. And at some point, if you do enough research, you're like, this just can't keep happening over and over. If you ever have said to yourself, this is a reality breakdown, no matter what our difference of opinion is, if that happens once, then that means there are things here that simply can't be explained. So saying this has always been part of the reality system for whatever reason, is it so crazy? Oh, it's just because it's heavy, then that has to defy everything we've researched over the last 10 years. If you see what I'm saying. I mean, these are endless. I'm pulling out the book, the What Are the Chances section. Just endless. What are the chances that the speed of light matches the geographical coordinates of the Great Pyramid? Speed of light in a vacuum, 299,792,458 meters per second. 299,792,458. The coordinates of the Great Pyramid, 299,792,458 degrees north, but with the period after the 29.979. The exact same 9 digits. Now, if you think that's not a coincidence, that's a reality breakdown. The chances of two 9-digit numbers matching up, and if anybody's actually really screaming at me from their bathtub, telling me that whoever constructed the Great Pyramid didn't understand the speed of light, and they certainly didn't use meters per second, I'm aware of all that, obviously. The point is just the fact that the numbers match up. Go match your phone number. Go match your phone number to something significant in this world. Go match your phone number to something significant. You're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to do it. So I'm just looking through the list here. Shipwreck. There's the legend and lore about 3 shipwrecks over a span of 200 years, where the only surviving dude's name was Hugh Williams in 1860. 1664, 1785, everybody went down except a Hugh Williams. Okay, Matt, that can be faked. Okay, you're right, it can be faked. But the list goes on and on. It's like 100 pages long. I'm going to read one of my favorites. Again, the list just goes on for I don't know how many pages. This will take maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but this is one of the most mind-boggling things you'll ever hear in your life. Most of you are somewhat aware of it, but let's reiterate some of the facts around Prince's death and the Queen's birthday. Now, here are 2 words that sound the same. Rain. Rain is wet. To reign, R-E-I-G-N, is what a queen does. Reign and rain. Prince is best known for the album Purple Rain, R-A-I-N. Prince died on 4/21, April 21st. The Queen's birthday just happens to be April 21st. Purple, which Prince wrote, he's famous for Purple Rain, purple is the color of British royalty. The headlines surrounding the Queen's 90th birthday, on basically the day Prince died or just before leading up to it, was all about her purple rain, purple R-E-I-G-N. This is leading up to 4/21. Purple has always been the color of, quote, royalty because they could combine colors in ways that the peasants weren't. So it says here, there was even a purple R-E-I-G-N beer, purple rain, but R-E-I-G-N beer for the Queen created for her birthday, right? Now, Niagara Falls was lit up and turned purple for the Queen on 4/21, the day of Prince's death. Now, this coincidence is so perfect that they announced the purple Niagara Falls would then also honor Prince. You don't have to do anything. You already got the colors and the lights set up hitting the water. You don't have to do a damn thing just to throw a switch and now you're honoring Prince. But Prince the singer, okay? Think of it. No new tribute in any way was needed. You got the exact same lights on the damn water. And if anybody else would have died, John Wayne, Morgan Freeman, you had to do a whole different type of tribute. There's only one guy that could have died on that day where you don't have to do a damn thing to the tribute. This is, if anybody's screaming at me, Matt, this is all planned and orchestrated, I'm well aware of those possibilities. Let's just continue. Okay. So, on the day of Prince's death, the album Purple Rain, R-A-I-N, was downloaded 1 million times, while the world was asked to celebrate the Queen's Purple, R-E-I-G-N, Purple Rain. Thousands of homes and businesses and even stadiums lit up their walls in the exact same way one would honor the Queen to honor Prince. Millions of people all over the world were paying tribute in the exact same way, to two different people at the same time. The wheel in Seattle was lit up purple, for Prince in this case, because it's associated with the United States, not for the Queen. Los Angeles, things were done all over the United States for Prince, not for the Queen. I hear what you're saying. I'll get to your objections from your bathtub in just a moment. Of course it was all for the Queen. What a coincidence. Okay. The rapper The Game posted a song on SoundCloud just hours after the news broke on Prince's death called Rest in Purple. Yeah, I guess it just takes hours to write and release a rap song. There are that, actually, Gucci Gang, it's that stupid, and that I wrote, I wrote mine in just a few seconds, so I guess that is totally believable. Now, again, the last part of this is the names of the people. You have the name Prince, which is obviously a name taken from the royal line. So in name, 2 titles of the royal house were honored in the same color on the exact same day using the exact same slogan. Let me repeat that. 2 titles of the royal house were honored in the same color on the exact same day using the exact same slogan, with all of this starting to be set up in the early 90s with the emergence of Prince, and the Queen turned 90. Okay, now look, guys, I hear people throwing the rubber duckies around, and I hear you. All right, now, considering how dark the creeps are, could all of this been pulled off, and even the start of it starting to be arranged almost 40 years ago? Could it? Yes. But yes, if this was all that they were interested in doing, and they put almost every resource they had into this, they could have pulled this off. Okay, but what if you have this one, and then you have 100 more of these, and you have the Kennedy-Lincoln Synchronicities, and you have how the hundreds of thousands of people in some way involved with NASA, the European Space Agency, hundreds of thousands of people in some way involved and in on it, and somehow nothing ever leaks out. It's one reality. Don't tell me about compartmentalization. Matt, don't you know about compartmentalization? The guy that makes the glove doesn't know anything else. Oh, yeah. Every single time it's Goldilocks reality. We see it, nobody else does. These are all, once you add it up and you see it over and over again, it becomes a reality breakdown. No groups and secret societies could pull this off. Page after, I've got flipping through it, page after page after page. What I just read about Prince and I could do this 100 times in this book. It's not possible. So reality breaks down, and once you come to that, once you see that, then anything is on the table. Then it's not so crazy, and it's not so cop-out to say the pyramids are just part of the reality construct. Someday, I think, as you progress in truth, I believe, I'm sorry to put words in anybody's mouth, but I believe once you've seen enough, once you put enough time in with the old guard, you start to see what I'm saying. If you're new to this pursuit of truth, and it's first grade, then it's just secret societies running around. That's all you can comprehend. And if you're Mandela affected, that's like a teleportation from first grade to 12th grade overnight. Once you see reality break down in front of you, then you don't need to be convinced about any of this shit. Or let's do one more, just ending it one more, because this is going for days. What are the chances that 2 books written in the 1890s by Ingersoll Lockwood would in some weird way foreshadow the Trump presidency? The first book, called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, written in the 1890s. Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. I know many of you are familiar with this. Will be as quick as I can. Okay. Donald Trump, at the time I wrote this, had a 12-year-old son named Baron Trump. That by itself is a pretty amazing coincidence to start, because there's almost nobody in this country named Baron. That's not like John or Peter. All right, that by itself, okay, well, obviously it gets better. The boy in the story, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, is a rich aristocrat guided by a person named Don. Baron Trump, guided by his delinquent father, Donald Trump, guided by a person named Don. Then get this. Lockwood writes another book called The Last President. That doesn't mention a Trump, but it describes an uproar in New York City after a dark horse candidate reaches the presidency. And there's no Trump in that one, but in the book, a protesting mob goes after the Fifth Avenue Hotel. That would be basically right where the Trump Tower is today and where Donald Trump lives. A mob goes after the Fifth Avenue Hotel. Right? Yeah, that's where Trump Tower is. Okay? Now, if there's anything I missed here, Americans organized in that book to resist a president elected in an unethical and corrupt manner. You ever hear that one? Russians hacked the election. Russians hacked the election. It's all fake, guys, but nevertheless, this is the reality script that the plastic man on the news presents. I mean, look, okay, by itself, any of these are not gonna move your perceptions on how the world works. But when you back up far enough and you see hundreds and hundreds back to back to back to back to back, and you've been doing it long enough, then you get to a point where you go, no real world could pull this off, time after time after time. If you came into truth by looking at the bang events and the events that are presented on the news with a tear, those types of events, and that's the way you came into truth. That's my original way I came into truth, watching Russian videos back in 2009 or so. But if you came in that way, you might have studied and watched the movie, the Robin Williams movie about Peter Pan, the Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman movie called Hook. You might have studied that movie and that event, and you might have seen, well, wait a second, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is ridiculous. And you see right through it, of course, as it should be seen right through. But then the first reaction when you come into truth is try to explain it away. How did they do this? I'm not even going to say, it is like, how did they arrange all of this? And everybody got their houses on the same day. And I said, but see, then you back up and it happens again. Maybe to some, I was to say to a lesser extent, but no, to some cases, a greater extent, like the gambling town and Florida and others. It happens over and over and over and over again. I'm sorry, maybe, Chuck P again and again, who's cataloged 100 and some of these events, we'll disagree that at some point, when it maybe on the 50th time, you say this can't be being pulled off over and over and over again with the same excuses, with the paid and threatened. And even if you can, Matt, you don't know who works in some of these organizations, but even if you can coordinate that, the Goldilocks reality of nothing ever getting out, the Goldilocks reality of the ridiculous performances by the catastrophe thespians, then you have another reality breakdown, why your friends, family, and cousins and everybody around you can't see how ridiculous it is, and we can see it. So you just keep having these elements of reality that don't add up. And I'm just saying, guys, whatever I'm doing here, if I'm not trying to get you to move I'm not trying to say if you weighted the Truman Show an 8, and you only rated The Matrix a 2, well, you need to move your sliding scale down, at least make it 5 and 5. I'm not trying to get anybody to do that. I'm just saying my best understanding of this is the evidence completely lines up on one side, on the side that this could not be being pulled off over and over. Decide that there's things going on here we can't comprehend, that this is some sort of Matrix or Sims game. The reality breakdowns happen, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Even scientifically, the reality breakdowns come. What's smaller than an atom? A proton. What's smaller than a proton? A quark. You can't keep going back to back through infinity like we've talked about. It's a reality breakdown that at some point something can only be made up of itself. The reality breakdown also comes in the very large. Well, what's on the other side of an expanding universe? So you have the scientific community openly admits that these things cannot be explained, which that by definition is a reality breakdown. In the middle, we've studied all the fake things that the Wikipedia's presented, the news presents, that everybody goes along with. That becomes a reality breakdown. Reality breakdowns across the board, and people that are Mandela affected and have had other weird things happen in their lives, visited by ghosts or apparitions, or all this stuff is completely, quote, crazy stuff. But when Matt says that the pyramid, it's not necessarily a given that it had to have been built, that's just crazy. See how that doesn't really make sense if you buy into all the other things over here? So is it a cop-out or not? I don't think so. Okay, I think it's I don't know how the pyramid got there, but at least it's a way of breaking out of box thinking and thinking about things in a completely new way. And that's generally what I try to do on this channel. Okay, let's close with this section. Certainly, taking each thing we've studied one at a time, it's easy almost to, well, not easy in some cases, but it's completely believable how the creeps could have orchestrated everything. It's just regular men and women behind everything. How many times have you heard me talk about this? I'm going to keep talking about it till I've convinced a few more people that regular men and women can't pull all this off. This by itself, sure. And you're looking at Governor Connolly's first interview in his bed after the Debbie Does Dallas event, where he had 3 wounds and the president 2 from the same bullet. And yeah, anything by itself, the creeps can pull this off. You have certain news people involved, his wife's involved, Connolly's involved, JFK family's involved, Dan Rather's involved. Okay, right. They can do this, but not when you times this by even this magnitude of event, not when you times it by 1,000. There's nothing on this earth could have the resources. And even if it was pulled off, there's never any real leaks, and the way the people around us behave towards it by itself is unnatural. So Matt, if you're convincing us, trying to convince us that this is more of a matrix than we thought, to end on something that can easily be coordinated and staged by the creeps is probably not a great. I'm just trying to be equal, fair on both sides. If there was a mega event every 20 years and they put all the resources into it, like this, or like the movie with Dustin Hoffman about Peter Pan called Hook, and every 20 years they put all the resources, even the 7-Eleven. But then, and they plan for 20. It's possible, but we've just once the season of Bang started after 2012, there was one of them every 6 months, and there was some every month or so, but on a much smaller scale, like Umpqua or San Bernardino and those types of things. They just happen too frequently, and that's just one element. The Bang events. You have the cover-up and the massive conspiracy that must be space. Then you have a whole endless set of endless Hollywood producers and directors dropping truth in movies and predictive programming and TV shows. And they're just, guys, the conspiracy, it's so, if I'm sounding repetitive, I'm sorry, because a lot of you totally get it. The conspiracy is so impossibly massive that it's just basically we live, to me, it's much more Matrix. It's much more we live in a literal movie script of some kind that is very fluid than anything anybody at all would call real. And then therefore I can say that maybe nothing built the pyramids. If you think that's fallacious logic, then please tell me in the comments. And there's always bad performances on purpose. There's always mistakes on purpose. That's just part of how the reality system has to deliver some of these events to those with the eyes that see. And then this always leads me over here to my favorite scene, the diner scene. What gave it away was her. Let me see. What gave it away was her. My aunt walked in a diner. If she ever came to work in high heels, she'd have blisters the size of quarters. Oh, and the performances were terrible. See you guys. Free voice tomorrow. Just a fun one. A top 10 countdown on catastrophe thespians.